My brother's wife accuses me of sabotaging her pregnancy because I refused to lend her my guest room. But the medical reports expose her. My older brother, Daniel, has always been my rock. We grew up very close, especially after our parents divorced when we were kids. He's one of those people who always seem to have a solution for everything, the kind of brother that even if we don't talk every day, I know he'll be there when I need him. That's why when he married Laura 3 years ago, I tried to get along with her from the beginning, not because I felt an instant connection with her, because honestly there never was one, but because she was my brother's wife and that made her part of our family. But honestly, Laura has always had something I can't define, but that makes me uncomfortable. It's hard to explain. She never did anything overtly bad to me at first, but there were little things. Passive-aggressive comments disguised as jokes, sidelong glances when I said something she didn't like, and a constant air of superiority that she tried to cover up with a fake smile. At first I ignored it. I gave her the benefit of the doubt because, well, maybe we just didn't understand our respective communication styles. Besides, Daniel was happy, and that's what mattered. But things started to change slowly after their first wedding anniversary. Laura stopped trying to be cordial with me and began to show her true colors. Her tone towards me was colder, more condescending. She made me feel like an intruder when I visited their house, and she always found a way to minimize anything I said or did. But even then I tried to keep the peace. I didn't want to create problems between her and Daniel, so I decided to keep my distance and limit our contact to family gatherings. All this brings me to a few weeks ago when Laura made a request that honestly left me speechless. She called me one Sunday afternoon, something unusual because we've never been phone talkers. When I answered, she was surprisingly friendly, almost effusive, which already put me on alert. After the usual greetings, she dropped the bomb. She wanted to use my guest room for her entire pregnancy. According to her, she was pregnant with her first child, and due to previous complications, her doctor had recommended that she rest in a quiet and stress-free environment. My house, located in a quieter suburban area than her downtown apartment, was, in her words, the perfect place. I explained as politely as possible that that wouldn't be possible. My guest room isn't just an empty room. I use it as an office for my work from home. Besides, even if I wanted to help, I couldn't reorganize my life for 9 months. Laura didn't take it well. There was an awkward silence before she answered me, and when she did, her tone was completely different from the beginning of the call. She accused me of being insensitive, of not caring about the well-being of her baby, and of being selfish for not wanting to help at such an important time in her life. I tried to explain again that it wasn't about a lack of empathy, but she wasn't listening to me anymore. She hung up abruptly, and a few minutes later I received a message from Daniel. He said he understood my position, but that maybe I could reconsider for the family. I replied that I was sorry that this was causing tension, but that my decision was final. I thought that would be the end of it, that Laura would simply find another solution, but it was only the beginning. In the following days, the rumors began. Apparently Laura was telling our relatives that I was being deliberately cruel, and that I didn't care about her high-risk pregnancy. She even hinted that my refusal to lend her the room was affecting her health. Suddenly I was receiving text messages from my mother, and my aunt telling me that I should be more understanding, and that these things are not forgotten in the family. My cousin, on the other hand, called me to tell me to ignore everyone because it was obvious that Laura was exaggerating. But by then the damage was done. The narrative that I was a saboteur was spreading, and I had no idea how to stop it. Worse yet, Daniel began to distance himself. Although he didn't say it directly, it was clear that Laura was turning him against me. He sent me a message one night telling me that if something happened to the baby, he could never forgive himself for not having done everything possible to ensure that Laura was okay. I felt betrayed. This was my brother, my life partner, and now he was doubting me because of his wife's lies. Up until that point I had tried to stay calm and not make things worse, but something in me began to change. I wasn't going to let Laura destroy the relationship I had with my brother or continue to tarnish my name. There was something about all this that didn't make sense, and I decided that if no one else was going to defend me, I would do it myself. Update 1. Several weeks have passed since the call that started this whole mess, and the situation has only gotten worse. I've been trying to get on with my life, focusing on my work and avoiding getting involved in the drama that Laura has unleashed, but it's impossible to ignore. It seems like every day a new accusation or malicious comment appears, and I'm starting to feel like some kind of villain in a soap opera. For starters, Laura has intensified her campaign against me. Not only is she talking badly about me with our family, but she has also started doing it with mutual friends and acquaintances. The other day, a friend of my mother called me to advise me to stop being so selfish because a baby is at stake. I was stunned. How can someone be so manipulative? Family gatherings have become unbearable. During a dinner at my parents' house, Laura didn't miss the opportunity to mention me every chance she got. She started by saying that she was exhausted because some people don't understand what it means to have a complicated pregnancy, and that although she was trying to stay positive, the stress was affecting her health. Everyone knew she was referring to me, but nobody said anything. I felt like I was in court being silently judged. Daniel, for his part, is clearly divided. I can see it on his face every time we talk. On the one hand, I know he doesn't want to believe that I am the person Laura describes. But on the other hand, he is influenced by his wife's constant complaints. He recently sent me a long and confusing message basically asking me to make peace with Laura to maintain family harmony. When I replied that I didn't understand why I was the one who had to give in, he left me on scene. We haven't spoken since. The worst of it all happened a few days ago. Laura, in an act that I believe was intended to humiliate me, went to my parents' house while I was there and began to recount in great detail what, according to her, the doctors had told her about her high-risk pregnancy. She said that the stress was increasing her blood pressure, and that the baby was in danger if she didn't find a way to relax. Then, looking me straight in the eyes, she added, "But of course some people just don't care about these things." I don't know how I managed to keep my cool. I felt my blood boil, but I knew that if I reacted aggressively, I would only give her more ammunition to use against me. Instead, I just smiled falsely and pretended that it didn't affect me. My mother, however, didn't help. She looked at me disapprovingly and then told Laura that she wished she could do more for her, more as if I wasn't the victim here. To top it all off, one of my friends who works at the same hospital where Laura is supposedly being treated told me something strange. According to her, the doctors didn't mention anything about stress as the main cause of complications in the records of pregnant patients. This left me intrigued but also skeptical. I don't want to think that someone would be capable of lying about something as serious as a pregnancy, but with Laura, I'm not sure of anything anymore. I feel trapped. Every day that passes, it seems that Laura gains more ground and I lose what little credibility I had. My mother and my aunt, who have always been important figures in my life, are clearly on Laura's side. My cousin, who has been my only consistent support so far, says that I should be patient and let the truth come out on its own. But what truth? If I don't do something soon, Laura is going to destroy the relationship I have with my brother and my reputation in the process. I'm considering taking more drastic measures. I don't know exactly what, but I need a way to prove that I'm not the horrible person Laura is portraying. And if it turns out that there's something fishy about this whole situation, I won't hesitate to expose it. For now, I'm watching and waiting, but I assure you, I'm not going to sit idly by much longer. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since things started to get out of control, and in that time, everything has continued to escalate. If before Laura was spreading rumors to tarnish my reputation, now it seems that she has turned this into a personal mission. Her ability to manipulate people and twist the narrative is frankly impressive, although also absolutely frustrating. And worst of all, while she gains allies, I feel more alone with each passing day. However, this last week has given me reason to believe that perhaps things are not what they seem. The most recent incident began with a call from my mother, something that has already become a habit lately. This time she woke me up very early one Saturday morning with a trembling voice full of concern. Laura had had an alleged health scare related to her pregnancy. According to my mother, Laura started feeling dizzy and short of breath the night before, which led Daniel to take her to the hospital emergency room. The doctors, my mother said, managed to stabilize her, but made it clear that she was at high risk if she didn't reduce her stress level immediately. "And you know what that means, right?" my mother said with a tone I already recognized as accusatory. I knew exactly where the conversation was going, but I decided not to interrupt her. "It means she needs peace, tranquility, and you could be providing it." That was the last straw. After weeks of being attacked and defamed, hearing those words from my own mother was a low blow. I gritted my teeth and answered her as calmly as I could muster. Mom, I understand your concern, but I still don't understand why this is my fault. I'm not against Laura or her pregnancy. I just said I can't let them have my room. And that shouldn't be a crime. She didn't want to listen. Before hanging up, she threw one last jab at me. I hope you don't regret it if something terrible happens. After that call, I sat on my bed for what seemed like an eternity trying to process what was happening. I felt anger, yes, but also a growing doubt in the back of my mind. What if I was really wrong? What if by maintaining my position I was putting an innocent person at risk? But something didn't add up. All this drama, this narrative that I'm the enemy doesn't make sense. Laura has made every conversation, every family gathering, revolve around her pregnancy and my supposed role as the villain who refuses to help. But why? Why would she go to such lengths to make me look bad when she could be focused on her health and her baby? That day, while I was trying to sort out my thoughts, I received a message that left me bewildered. It was from Anna, a close friend who works as a nurse at the hospital where Laura was taken. The message said, "Hey, I don't know if this is relevant, but I was reviewing last night's records and saw that Laura was here. Something doesn't add up. What she describes as pregnancy complications doesn't match what I saw in the medical report. Of course, I can't tell you more because it would be unethical, but I think you should pay attention." I felt a chill run down my spine. What did she mean by doesn't match? Was Laura not as bad as she said? Or worse, was she exaggerating or making it all up? My mind began to race with possibilities, each more outlandish than the last. At first, I felt guilty for even considering that someone could lie about something as serious as a pregnancy, but then I remembered all the inconsistencies, all the things Laura had said that never seemed to make sense. For example, why did she always talk about the doctors vaguely, without mentioning names or specific diagnoses? Why did her symptoms change depending on who she was telling them to? It was at that moment when I decided that enough was enough. I had tried to keep the peace, I had tried to ignore her accusations, and I had endured weeks of being the target of her smear campaign. But now, with this new information from Anna, I felt I had reason to suspect that something bigger was going on. I decided that I needed professional help, someone who could uncover the truth without me having to get directly involved. That same day, I looked for a private investigator. I found Ricardo, a man with experience in family cases and a reputation for being extremely discreet. When I explained the situation to him, he didn't show surprise, as if he had heard similar things before. He told me that these kinds of cases take time, but that he would do everything possible to find any inconsistency or evidence that could clear my name. I gave him all the information I had. The dates when Laura had said she had complications, the vague names of the doctors she mentioned, and even details about family gatherings where she made her accusations. Ricardo assured me that he would get to work immediately. Meanwhile, I try to act as if nothing is happening, but it's difficult. Every family gathering is still a kind of public trial where Laura finds new ways to make me look bad. During a recent dinner, she began to talk about how difficult this pregnancy has been for her, and how some people just don't understand how important it is to have support. My mother, as expected, agreed with her completely. I, on the other hand, remained silent. There was no point in fighting, not when I had the hope that soon I would have evidence that could put an end to this whole charade. However, I can't help but feel anxious. What if I'm wrong? What if Laura is really telling the truth and all this is just a misunderstanding? But at the same time, my intuition keeps telling me that something is not right. There are too many things that don't fit, too many unanswered questions. For now, I can only wait. Ricardo has promised me a preliminary report in the next few days, and I'm crossing my fingers that he finds something that will help me understand what's really going on. If Laura is lying, I swear I won't rest until I expose her. But if I'm wrong, well, I'll have to face the consequences. Whatever happens, I'm not giving up. Update 3. 2 months have passed since I decided to hire Ricardo, the private investigator, and what he discovered not only confirmed my suspicions, but also left me completely incredulous. I never thought things would reach this level of manipulation and deceit. What started as a family dispute over a guest room has transformed into a case worthy of an investigative program. Now I have in my hands evidence that could change everything. During these weeks, I've done everything possible to stay calm and act normally, but it's been difficult. Laura has not stopped attacking me passive-aggressively at family gatherings, and my relationship with Daniel is practically broken. He barely speaks to me, and when he does, it's with a distant and cold tone he's never used with me before. It hurts me deeply because Daniel had always been my biggest supporter, but now it seems he has chosen to believe Laura's lies. A few weeks ago, during a meal at my parents' house, Laura arrived late as usual, making sure everyone noticed her entrance. She sat at the head of the table with a hand resting on her belly, which by the way still looked as flat as 3 months ago, and began talking about her difficult pregnancy. According to her, the doctors were increasingly worried about her health, but with her effort and the prayers of the family, she was holding on. What really baffled me was a comment she made while looking directly at me. Sometimes the people we least expect can be the ones who hurt us the most. But I have faith that everything will turn out well. My mother, as always, consoled her, while my father seemed uncomfortable but didn't say anything. I just took a deep breath and remained silent because I knew I would soon have the truth on my side. And that truth came a week later. Ricardo called me one Friday morning with a voice that, although professional, couldn't hide a slight tinge of disbelief. "You have to see this in person," he told me. We met at a coffee shop where he handed me an envelope full of documents and photographs. First, the medical reports. According to Ricardo, Laura had indeed visited the hospital on the dates she mentioned, but not for pregnancy complications. In fact, the medical records indicated that she had never been pregnant in the first place. The visits were for minor symptoms such as dizziness and headaches, which doctors attributed to stress or, in some cases, dehydration. There was no mention of a pregnancy in any of the documents. Then there were the photographs. Ricardo had followed Laura for a week and discovered that, far from being on absolute bed rest as she claimed, she spent much of her time in a rented art studio working on her projects. In one of the photos, she is even seen carrying heavy boxes, something someone with a complicated pregnancy, or even a normal pregnancy, would not do. But what shocked me the most was the last piece of the puzzle: a recorded conversation. Ricardo managed to obtain a recording of Laura talking to a friend in the art studio. In the recording, Laura admitted that the whole pregnancy thing was a lie to manipulate Daniel and my family. Her real goal was for me to lend her my guest room. Not because she needed it to rest, but because she wanted to turn it into a space for her art. "It's perfect," she said in the recording. "The natural light, the space, it's just what I need to work on my projects. And if I have to fake a pregnancy to get it, then so be it. Daniel's family is so easy to manipulate." Hearing those words was like a bucket of cold water. On the one hand, I felt relief because I finally had concrete evidence to prove that I wasn't the horrible person Laura had been describing. But on the other hand, I felt an indescribable rage. How could someone be so calculating, so cruel? Laura had not only played with my family's feelings, but she had also ruined my relationship with my brother and damaged my reputation. I spent the whole weekend analyzing the information, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew that wouldn't be enough. Laura had manipulated my whole family, and I wanted to make sure everyone knew the truth, that she had nowhere left to hide. I decided to organize a family meeting at my parents' house. I convinced my mother that we needed to talk all together, because I was worried about Laura's health and wanted to resolve the tensions. It wasn't easy, but she agreed. The meeting was scheduled for the following Sunday, and until then all I could do was wait and prepare. Meanwhile, I haven't said anything to anyone about what I discovered, not even to my cousin Santiago, who has been my only ally during all this time. I want everyone to hear it at the same time, so there's no way Laura can try to control the narrative before everything comes to light. Sunday is just around the corner, and I honestly can't wait to see how Laura tries to justify what she's done. If she thought she could play me and get away with it, she's about to get the surprise of her life. Update 4. Sunday arrived with a mix of emotions that I could barely control. I had nerves, accumulated rage, and a burning desire to clear my name. The family meeting I organized at my parents' house was destined to be the stage where everything would come to light. I had spent days preparing every detail, making sure nothing was left out of place. This time there would be no room for Laura to twist the truth. From early on, the atmosphere at my parents' house was tense. My mother was visibly uncomfortable, probably because she thought the meeting would be another episode of confrontation between Laura and me. My father, although more reserved, had an inquisitive look. The other relatives arrived little by little. My aunts, cousins, and of course Laura and Daniel. She arrived with her typical air of superiority, with her hand resting on her belly, which again remained as flat as ever, and an expression of false vulnerability. Daniel, for his part, looked exhausted, as if he were fed up with the drama but still determined to support his wife. When everyone was gathered, I took a deep breath and stood up. I felt my heart pounding, but I knew I couldn't hesitate. I looked at each person in the room and began to speak with a calmness I didn't know I had inside. Thank you all for coming today. I know the last few weeks have been difficult, and I want you to know that it wasn't my intention to cause tension in the family. But I also believe it's time for us to clear things up. There's something very important that all of you need to know. The silence in the room was palpable. I could feel everyone's eyes fixed on me, some expectant, others clearly skeptical. But what I felt most was Laura's gaze. For a moment, it seemed to me that there was a flicker of worry in her eyes, as if she knew what was coming. For weeks, I've been accused of not caring about the well-being of Laura and her supposed high-risk pregnancy. My refusal to lend them my guest room has been used as proof that I'm insensitive, selfish, and cruel. And although I tried to remain calm, there came a point where I couldn't stand idly by while being defamed. That's why I decided to investigate, and what I discovered is something none of you expect. I took out the documents that Ricardo had gathered, placed them on the table next to the photos and the transcript of the recording. I looked Laura straight in the eye as I said, "Everything Laura has said about her pregnancy is a lie. She was never pregnant." The room erupted in instant chaos. My mother gasped, my father frowned in confusion, and the aunts began to murmur among themselves. Laura, for her part, tried to interrupt me, raising her voice and saying things like, "This is a personal attack. I don't know what she's talking about." But I didn't give her the opportunity to continue with her theatrics. These are the medical reports from the hospital where, according to Laura, she was treated for pregnancy complications, I said, holding the papers up. Here is the proof that there was never a registered pregnancy. The visits she made to the hospital were for minor things like dehydration and dizziness, but at no time was there a mention of a pregnancy. In fact, the doctors have no record that she has been in any kind of prenatal care. I could see how Laura's face began to change. Her usual expression of confidence crumbled as I continued speaking. But I'm not finished. In addition to this, I hired a private investigator to find out what was really going on here. There are photos of Laura in a rented art studio carrying boxes and working on her projects, something someone with a complicated pregnancy wouldn't do. But most important is this recording. I connected my phone to a small speaker I had brought with me, and played the audio where Laura admitted that she had made it all up to manipulate the family and pressure me into giving up my guest room. Laura's words echoed in the room clear as day. The phrase, "If I have to fake a pregnancy to get it, then so be it," made my mother put her hands to her mouth and my cousin Santiago slammed the table in a fit of indignation. When the recording ended, the room fell completely silent. Laura tried to speak, but this time no one seemed willing to listen. Daniel slowly rose from his seat with an expression of disbelief and fury I had never seen on him before. "Is this true, Laura?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Did you lie to me? Did you lie to all of us?" Laura began to stammer, trying to find an excuse, but she couldn't sustain her lie in the face of the evidence I had presented. Finally, she got up from the table and shouted, "All of this is your fault," pointing her finger at me. "You've always wanted to make me look bad. You're a manipulator." But this time no one defended her. Even my mother, who had been on her side from the beginning, stood up and said, "How could you do something so horrible? You made us believe we were going to have a grandchild. You deceived the whole family." Laura quickly left the house, leaving behind a devastated Daniel. He didn't say anything more after that. He just sat there with a lost look while the others tried to assimilate what had just happened. The meeting ended shortly after, but not without many of those present apologizing to me for having doubted me. My mother, in tears, hugged me and said, "I don't know how we're going to fix this, but I'm so sorry, daughter." For the first time in months, I felt a bit of relief. The truth had finally come out, and Laura could no longer continue manipulating anyone else. But I knew this was only the beginning. The consequences of her actions were about to catch up with her. Final update. 6 months have passed since the day of the family meeting. And although at that moment I felt an indescribable relief at exposing the truth, it wasn't the end of the drama. What happened afterwards was a series of consequences that Laura clearly did not anticipate. Somehow this left scars on the whole family, but it also showed what can happen when someone decides to manipulate and lie without limits. Now, with the perspective of time, I can say that this whole mess not only brought to light who Laura really is but also who we are as a family. After that explosive meeting, Laura disappeared completely for several weeks. She didn't answer calls, she didn't appear at family gatherings, and of course she didn't want to see anyone. Daniel stayed at my parents' house for a few days while he tried to process everything. During that time, he and I had several conversations that were both uncomfortable and necessary. Daniel was devastated. As angry as he was with Laura, he was also dealing with the fact that the woman he had decided to spend his life with had lied to him so blatantly and cruelly. I remember one night in particular, while we were sitting on the porch of my parents' house, when he finally said something I had been waiting weeks to hear. "I'm so sorry, really. I don't know how I could believe her. I guess I wanted to think that she wouldn't be capable of something like that, but now I see how blind I was. You didn't deserve any of this." It was a bittersweet moment. On the one hand, I felt that my brother finally understood the damage that had been done, but on the other hand, I knew that our wounds would take time to heal. I told him that he didn't need a perfect apology, just his willingness to repair our relationship. Daniel promised that he would do everything possible to fix things, and since then we have been working on it. Although there is still a way to go, at least I feel that the bond we had is in the process of being rebuilt. On the other hand, Laura didn't remain silent for long. After weeks of silence, she tried to change the narrative in her favor, but no one was willing to believe her anymore. She started by saying that it had all been a misunderstanding, that she had never said she was pregnant, but that the doctors had confused it. When that excuse didn't work, she changed her story, saying that she was dealing with an emotional disorder, and that her actions had been the result of pressure and stress. She even had the nerve to send my mother a message asking for understanding because, according to her, she was also a victim. My mother, who until then had been her biggest supporter, responded with a short message: "Don't talk to me again." The family in general cut off all contact with Laura. My parents made it clear that she was not welcome in their lives, and my cousins and uncles followed suit. No one wanted to have anything to do with someone who had lied in that way and played with the feelings of an entire family. However, the hardest blow for Laura came when Daniel decided to end the marriage. The divorce process was quick and, as Daniel told me, relatively simple because they had no children or significant assets in common. Even so, Laura didn't leave without a fight. She tried to make Daniel look like the guilty party, inventing stories about how he hadn't supported her, and how his lack of emotional understanding had led her to act that way. But Daniel, with the support of the whole family and the evidence I had gathered, didn't allow those lies to prosper. In the end, the divorce was resolved in Daniel's favor, and Laura left empty-handed. For my part, I also took my own measures. After consulting with my cousin Santiago, who is a lawyer, I decided to send Laura a formal letter demanding a public apology for the false accusations she made against me. Santiago drafted the letter impeccably, making it clear that if I didn't receive an apology, I would be willing to take legal action for defamation. Laura, probably aware that she had no way to win, agreed. The apology came in the form of an email addressed to the whole family. It was brief and sincere, and clearly written with the intention of complying with my demand without really admitting anything. But for me it was enough. I didn't need her words. I already had my victory in having exposed the truth and restored my reputation. That email marked the last contact I had with Laura. From there, life began to return to normal. Although the scandal left a mark on the family, I feel that we are more united than before. The initial tensions, especially between my mother and me, have diminished, and now we have a much more open relationship. My mother even admitted in a recent conversation, "I was wrong to doubt you. I should never have taken sides without understanding the situation." With respect to Daniel, he is still in the process of recovering emotionally. Luckily, he seems to be taking the time to reflect on what happened and prioritize his well-being. I've told him more than once that he shouldn't carry the blame for what happened. Laura was an expert in manipulation, and anyone could have fallen for her game. As for me, I'm at peace. These 6 months have been a challenge, But they have also taught me a lot about the importance of defending myself, even when it seems like the whole world is against me. I also learned that although family conflicts can be painful, the truth always has a way of coming out. Laura tried to destroy me, but in the end it was her own web of lies that led to her downfall. Now I look to the future with the peace of mind of knowing that I did the right thing. And although I don't expect to hear from Laura again, I can't help but feel that somewhere she must be regretting having underestimated the person who decided to confront her.